What is motivational interviewing and what are its benefits? In this video, you'll hear from Sandstone Care CEO Michael Hunter as he explains how motivational interviewing can be a great way to have a constructive conversation that brings about change. Hey, it's Clint with Sandstone Care, where we help teens, young adults, and their families overcome challenges that come with substance use, addiction, and mental health conditions. All right, let's get right to it.
People generally have kind of varying degrees of exposure to motivational interviewing. I was first introduced to motivational interviewing in the late 1990s, which certainly dates me, but I had a professor who named Marianne Suarez, who later ended up writing a book on the subject of motivational interviewing. It was very much a passion of hers. And prior to participating in a class with her, I had never heard of it. I had never been exposed to it. And in a lot of ways, the field was very different in the late 90s than it is today. Thankfully, it's gotten better. And when I saw Marianne demonstrating motivational interviewing and recordings of William Miller using motivational interviewing, the calm, eliciting style of interacting with clients appealed to me greatly and stood out in contrast to more confrontational, traditional approaches to recovery that I'd seen up until that point. And so motivational interviewing is a way of interacting with clients to help support them in the process of looking at and resolving ambivalence that they have about behavioral change. It stands out from something called Rogerian therapy, which really is intended more just to kind of explore issues broadly without guiding, without directing. You know, the clinician in those conversations has kind of a distance from the process. But with motivational interviewing, what we're doing is we're helping people to explore and resolve ambivalence in a directive way. So we're sort of deliberately supporting their arguments for change, which increases their statistical likelihood of being able to change over time.
It reminds me a little bit of like the word education, right? And education means to draw out. And so on the one hand, it's not confrontational, like you said. And it's helping to draw out the desires of somebody and kind of help them kind of navigate their own mind, their own passions, their own heart, their own feelings. But at the same time, it is very intentional, right? It is like it has a plan. And so it's a great balance between not being pushy and also being able to help guide the person to come to their own conclusions and to support themselves in their own, substance use or mental health journey, right? So what are some of the benefits of motivational interviewing? What have you seen to be the results or the benefits of good motivational interviewing?
Statistically, there are a lot of evidence-based models of care, especially in the field of addiction, that we know are effective. And so one of the advantages of motivational interviewing when compared to some of the other common models that are used in our field is that it tends to be effective even in very small doses, meaning that brief conversations can have a significant impact. And so oftentimes the effect is very similar to other gold standard evidence-based models of care, but it occurs often in about half the sessions that other models might require. And because motivational interviewing is focused on eliciting change talk from the person that you're having the conversation with, the likelihood of follow through tends to be higher than it is if we're simply providing advice or suggestions. And there's also a sense that that with motivational interviewing, when someone does execute the behavior change, their successes and or their struggles are truly their own. In other words, because they come from the clinician, there's no dynamic where the client looks at you and says, but you told me to do X, Y, and Z, and I did X, Y, and Z, and it didn't work. Because the solutions come from them, the conversations have an organic, client-centered feel to them because they are about and around the person who is struggling with the difficult behavior. And so when someone is successful, because the solution came from them, it empowers them to be able to maintain that after the services are over. And additionally, if they struggle, because the struggles aren't coming from suggestions that I've made that they were unable to follow or simply didn't work, they can look more objectively at where the source of the failure is or difficulties is coming from. So you can kind of reboot and start the process again and take a look at it from the reference point of experience, because now they've kind of made this effort and they have this experience, and now we can kind of take a look at that and figure out how to better support that.
So there's like the idea of, okay, they're coming to the conclusions themselves, and it's not going to be this "you told me this" type of thing. That's a plus. You're not going to have to do, this is not necessarily an everyday thing. This can be done in smaller segments, right? Like, or it doesn't have to be as frequent, and it can still be effective. And so like those are two primary things that are super helpful when it comes to motivational interviewing. Am I missing anything else?
No, I mean, I think that's a big part of it. I remember seeing a client at one point who had come to me after having gotten a third DUI, and self-referred, was not court-ordered. And I remember the first conversation we had, he was telling me about his use history. And the previous DUI that he had had, it had been some years since that had occurred. So I want to say it had been maybe 15 years since the most recent DUI. But he was telling me that during that time, he had been drinking pretty much every day, and that on a number of occasions he had tried to stop and had been completely unsuccessful. So he was coming into the session very skeptical of being able to stay sober, wanted it, and said, Michael, I want this more than anything else in the world, but I will be honest with you and tell you, I don't think I can actually do this. I don't even think I'm going to make it through today, let alone the remainder of treatment and then beyond. It turns out he was successfully able to make the behavior change. He came in and was seeing me for about 3 months. And on that very last session, he came in and he was kind of quiet for a moment and said, I was thinking about all of our sessions on the drive over here. And he said, I realized a couple of things. And I said, what did you realize? And he said, I realized that in no session that I've ever done with you, have you ever told me what I needed to do or what you thought I should do. And I said, that's true. And he said, do you know what that means? And I said, no, what does that mean? And he said, it means that everything that I have done since coming to see you came from me. I said, that's true. I said, that means I don't need you. I said, that also is true.
If you want to learn more about treatment options for you, your teen, or young adult, then tell us about your situation on a confidential call using the number linked up in the description box below. or live chat with us at sandstonecare.com. We'll connect you with the treatment that you need, and if we're not the right fit, we'll get you where you need to go. Be well, and remember that change is possible.